Hi everyone! Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you all how to make this strawberry shortcake inspired bag here. Has a strawberry keychain, bow in the front, some flowers everywhere. And I'm going to show you all at the very end how to hand sew a lining into your bag, as well as how to hand sew a pocket. I don't really know if you can see that here, but there is a functioning pocket inside of here. And I will have this bag available on my Depop if anyone is interested in purchasing this for myself. I made the original version of this bag here a couple months ago, back in March. You may have seen it on Pinterest, but I felt like this design needed some work. It's very big. I have strap blindness. I tend to make my straps way too long, so I've been getting better at that, which is why I made this one a tote bag. For this bag, I do recommend that you just know the complete basics, you know, single, half, double, treble crochet, slip stitch. Also how to sew things together, just like doing the most basic sewing stitch you could do, just going back and forth. I do try to briefly explain how to do it, but I'm not very great at it, as you will see. I do recommend that you know the basics before watching this tutorial. And one more thing before the tutorial starts. Unfortunately, there is no strawberry keychain tutorial part in this. I'm so sorry. I forgot to record. Yeah. I kind of forgot to record while I was doing it. And it took me an hour and a half to make this dumbass strawberry. And it took me like 3 tries. I had to restart 3 times, and it was very annoying. I'm not good at amigurumi. I'm not good at making plastic keychains, but in the description, I will have linked a bunch of super helpful strawberry keychain tutorials for everyone. You couldn't pay me $1 million to try and recreate this monstrosity of a strawberry. Like, I genuinely don't know what I did to end up with this, which is also why I just did not include the strawberry keychain part in this tutorial. But everything else, from start to finish, will be in this tutorial. All of the granny squares, how to slip stitch them together, how to do the striped strap, how to make the bow, everything. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you find it somewhat helpful. Please tag me if you recreate this bag for yourself. I would love to see it. But I hope you all enjoy this tutorial. Please comment any questions or any constructive criticism that you may have for me. Just please be nice, because I am very sensitive and I might cry and delete your comment if you're mean to me. But yeah, I hope you all enjoy. And I'm gonna stop talking now, that way we can get started with our bag. For our project, we're going to be making 9 solid pink granny squares, and we're also going to be creating 4 more granny squares that have color changes in the center to create the white flower and the leaves, and I'll be showing you guys how to do that after this solid granny square. So to get started, I'm going to be doing the chain 4 method as opposed to a magic circle to create my granny squares. You can do whichever method you prefer, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I will be showing you all how to do the chain 4 method. So to do that, you're going to start with a slip knot. This is the easiest way that I like to do a slip knot. Take your yarn, wrap it around your first 2 fingers, create a little X. You're going to take your hook, go to this loop here, pull your yarn through, and bam, you got a slip knot. And now we're just going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're going to slip stitch into this first chain here, and that'll create a magic ring dupe. So the first thing we're going to do, our first round, is you're going to chain 4. This is going to act as our first double crochet in chain 1. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to be doing 7 double crochets with chains in between them, which will leave us with a total of 8 in the end. So to do a double crochet, you're just going to wrap your yarn around your hook. I'm also going to be crocheting over the tail, makes it easier to close at the end, by the way. Then you're going to pull up a loop, pull through the 2 loops, wrap your yarn around your hook once more, and pull through 2 loops. That gives you a double crochet. Then you're just going to chain 1, and again repeating this, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. So now we should have a total of 4, because remember, our first one acted as our double crochet. And you're going to repeat this until you have a total of 8. And once you've completed that, you're now going to slip stitch into your 3rd chain from our original chain 4 that we did in the beginning. And what you want to do now is take your tail, and if you crocheted over your tail, you should just be able to pull it and close that circle. And now onto round 2, we're going to slip stitch into this chain 1 space here, and we're going to chain 3, which again is going to act as our first double crochet. We're going to insert an additional 3 double crochets in here, which will then give us a total of 4. Now to create our puff stitch, you're going to take your hook, remove it from this loop, you're going to insert it into the top of this chain 3, which again is acting as our first double crochet. You're going to insert your hook back into this loop here, and then you're just going to pull through, and that'll create your little puff or your little petal. And you're just going to chain 2, and you're going to repeat this all the way around until you have a total of 8 petals. So once again, we're going to double crochet 4 times into this chain 1 space that we have here. You're going to remove your hook, insert it into the top of your first double crochet, put it back through that loop, pull through, and chain 2. And that'll give us another little puff here. And again, just repeat this all the way around until you have 8 petals. Alright, so I've reached my 8th and final petal here. Is completing my last double crochet if my yarn cooperates, which it literally hasn't been this entire time. But we're gonna chain 2, and then you're gonna insert your hook just into this little area here. And you have completed your 2nd round. Now onto the 3rd round. This is going to be made up of our double crochet clusters. To start out, you're going to chain 4, and similar to our first round, this is going to act as a double crochet plus a chain 1. Next, we're going to double crochet into these chain 2 spaces that we have here. We're going to be doing our double crochet clusters, and to do that, you're going to start a double crochet, but you're not going to finish it. So you see how I only did the first part? You put your yarn around your hook, insert it, and you pull through the first 2 loops only. And you're just going to repeat this. You're going to repeat this 3 times until you have a total of 4 loops around your hook. And then you're going to yarn over and just pull through all 4 of those, and that'll create a double crochet cluster. And then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to do this 1 more time within that same chain 2 space. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, pull up 2 loops, do that 1 more time. Now you should have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, and just chain 1. And you're going to repeat this all the way around until you get to this last one here. Alright, once you get to your last space, you're going to do the first double crochet cluster as normal. And you're going to chain 1. And then because we already have our first double crochet here, you're only going to do a cluster of 2 instead of 3. So it's just going to be the same concept. You do it once, do it 1 more. You should have 3 loops on your hook instead of 4. And you're just going to pull through, and then you are going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain here, because we still want to leave that chain 1 space here. It might look a little funny, you might have more of a gap here than in your other ones, but who cares. So here is round 3 complete. Now we have 1 more round, and this is going to create our square border. So you are going to slip stitch into this chain 1 space. You're going to chain 3, because again, going to act as our first double crochet. And you're gonna insert 2 more double crochets here. This is gonna be like the granny stitch essentially in a normal granny square. And then you're gonna repeat that 2 more times. So we're gonna do 3 more double crochets into this chain 1 space here. And then we're gonna do one more cluster of 3 double crochets into the other stitch here. And now that we have our 3 little clusters of double crochets, we're gonna create our first corner. So for this, you're gonna do a treble crochet. To do that, you're gonna wrap your yarn around your hook twice. You're gonna insert your hook. You're gonna pull through 2 loops, 2 loops again, and 2 loops again. It's basically just like a double crochet with an extra step. And you're gonna do 3 of these. So now that we have our 3 treble crochets, to create the corner, we're gonna chain 2. And then you're gonna insert 3 more double crochets into the same space. We're gonna do 3 more. We're gonna do 1, 2, and 3. Alrighty, you can see the corner forming here. And we're gonna repeat this all the way around until you reach this last chain space. You're gonna do your last corner. So we're gonna repeat doing 3 clusters of those double crochets. This will be 1, 2, and 3. And now again, we're gonna insert 3 treble crochets here. Oops. Alright, you have your 3 treble crochets. Now you're gonna chain 2 to create the corner, and then insert 3 more treble crochets in the same space. And again, just repeat this until you get to the very end. Alright, once you've done your final set of 3 double crochet clusters, you're gonna get to your last chain space, where you're gonna insert yet again 3 treble crochets. Chain 2, 3 more treble crochets, and last one here. Now you're going to slip stitch into the top of your chain 3 here. Cut your yarn, fasten it off, and you've created your granny square. Alright, now that you've made your first solid pink granny square, you're now going to make 8 more of these, and then next I will show you how to make a colorful flower. Alright, moving on to our colorful flower, you're going to still use that same pink yarn that we used originally, and you're also going to be using a yellow, white, and green. Each round is going to be using a different color, and for our first round, we're going to be using this yellow yarn. And once again, I'm going to be doing our chain 4 method. Just for the sake of time, I don't want this video to be a million years long. I'm not going to show you the exact same steps that I just did for this granny square. I'm just going to be showing you guys how to do the color changes in between each row. So we're going to go ahead and just start off by doing our row 1, and I will meet you at the end. Alright, so right now I'm doing my 8th double crochet, chain 1, gonna pull my tail to close this little circle, and now I'm gonna slip stitch into that 3rd stitch here. I'm gonna pull up my loop a little bit, what I'm gonna do to color change for this one is I'm just gonna leave a nice little tail with this yellow yarn. And with my white yarn here, I'm gonna make a slip stitch. You don't have to do this necessarily, I just have anxiety and like my pieces to be secure. So now that you have your second color, which should be white, slip stitched onto your hook, you're gonna insert it into this loop here. Make sure you just wanna pull your yarn tight, and then you're just gonna pull it through. And just tug on the white yarn to make it nice and tight, same with the yellow. And then make sure you are crocheting over these tails because that's less ends to weave in later. Alright, and now you're just gonna proceed with the second round like normal. Gonna insert our hook, slip stitch, and now the white yarn should be on your hook. Chain 3 and insert 3 double crochets. You're gonna pull up your loop here and chain 2. And there you go, your first petal's done. And now again, just like last time, you're gonna repeat this all the way around until you get a total of 8 petals. Okay, now I'm gonna show you guys another method of color changing that you can do. I've already clipped my white yarn here, and I have my green yarn ready to go. So I have my chain 2, but I haven't slip stitched yet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna slip stitch into the top of this here. You're only gonna pull through the first loop though. You're not gonna finish that slip stitch by pulling through again. We're not gonna do that. Now, what we're gonna do, you're gonna take your green yarn and you're gonna place it around your hook. You can do a slip knot with your green yarn like we did for our first round. It doesn't matter if you do or if you don't. Just make sure you're leaving a long tail regardless. You're gonna take your green yarn and you're gonna pull it through both of these loops on your hook, and then you're gonna chain 1. And now just make sure you tug on these ends so they're nice and secure and tight. And there's another way that you can do a color change. So I just chained 4 like normal, and we're gonna continue on with this round. Alright, so now that I have my 2 double crochet cluster done here, because remember we're only doing 2, not 3, because we have this chain 4 here, I'm gonna do the same color change method that we just did, which is by not fully finishing our slip stitch. I'm gonna grab my pink yarn here, gonna leave a nice long tail, pull through those green loops, chain 1, pull on our yarn here to make it nice and tight. You can go ahead and chop your green yarn, and there we go. Just make sure you slip stitch into this chain 1 space, do your chain 3 to act as your first double crochet, and you're good to go to finish your last round. Alrighty, now I'm just fastening off my work, and congratulations, you have just completed the second part of your bag. So like I said, you're gonna want a total of 9 of the solid granny squares, 4 of these granny squares, for a total of 13. And I will see you guys when I come back with all of my squares. I've completed all of my granny squares. As you can see, I have 4 of these granny squares, and then I have 9 of just the solid pink granny squares. Now you can go ahead and weave in all of these ends. I like to wait until I have the bag sewn together to weave in all the ends, but before we actually sew the bag together, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how to make our strap. We're now gonna start on our strap. For this, we're gonna be using a 4mm hook rather than a 4.5, and we're also gonna be using that same pink yarn we used for our granny squares, some red yarn, and some white yarn to create the stripes. As I mentioned, this is a striped strap. We're going to be using the same color changing technique that we used for the granny squares for these stripes. And another thing to note, before making your strap, you want to make your strap a lot less long than what you think you're going to need, especially if you're using acrylic yarn, because over time, especially if you put heavy things in your bag,
your strap is going to stretch. You can also prevent this by lining your strap with fabric. I'm too lazy to do that, so that's also why I size down my crochet hook, and I also try to use like a tighter tension to hopefully prevent some stretching. With that out of the way, we're gonna start on our strap. I'm gonna make a slip knot, and this entire strap is just made out of half double crochets and single crochets, by the way. We're gonna make a slip knot with our pink yarn, and we're gonna chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Actually, I'm gonna do 9. I'm gonna do 9. So chain 9, and then you're gonna half double crochet into the first chain here. And we're just gonna half double crochet down this whole row for a total of 8 half double crochets. And if you want your bag strap to be thicker or less thick, you can add or subtract stitches as well. Do whatever you like for your bag. We've reached the end of our row. We're gonna chain 1, turn our work, and we're gonna half double crochet straight down this whole row once again. And again, when you reach the end of your row, you're just gonna chain 1, turn your work, and make sure you're inserting a half double crochet into that very first stitch. And we're just gonna do 2 more rows of half double crochet for a total of 4 rows. I've reached the almost end of our 4th row. I just have 1 stitch left. I'm gonna be doing the color change that I showed you guys with our granny square that involves finishing the stitch with your new color. So again, to do that, I've already cut my yarn, like I said, just to prepare for this. You're gonna start a half double crochet, but you're only gonna pull through the first 2 loops. You're not gonna finish it by pulling through that last loop. Instead, what we're gonna do, we're gonna go in with our white yarn. Just gonna get some of that here. So now, with your white yarn, you're gonna just put it over your hook and pull through those remaining 2 pink loops. But make sure, again, you're leaving a long tail. That way you can crochet over these ends and you don't have to weave them in later. And then you're gonna chain 1 here, and then you're just gonna pull really tightly on these tails here. And now we're gonna be doing single crochets with this white yarn. We're only gonna be doing 1 row. So we're gonna crochet over these tails, and we're gonna just do 1 row of single crochets. And this part might look a little funny here, but we will fix that in just a second. And again, just like we did with that last row, you are not gonna finish this whole entire single crochet stitch here. We are gonna do a color change to our red. So I'm gonna start the single crochet, but I'm only gonna pull through 1 loop. I'm gonna go ahead and cut my yarn, and I'm gonna bring my red over, and again, just place it on your hook, but leave a long tail. Pull through the last 2 white loops, chain 1, pull tightly on your yarn to make it nice and secure. And now, to fix this little bump thing we got going on, all you're gonna do is just pull the tail ends and then just straighten it back out, and it goes away. But with our red yarn, we're now gonna do 2 rows of half double crochet. And again, just make sure you're crocheting over these ends. Alright, and once we've reached our final stitch in our 2nd row of doing the red half double crochets, we're gonna color change back to white. So once again, I'm gonna start a half double crochet, but I'm only gonna pull through the first 2 loops here. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut my yarn, bring back my white yarn here, put that on my hook, pull through the 2 red loops, chain 1, I'm gonna pull real tight, and now we're gonna do 1 more row of single crochet with our white yarn, And then for the rest of the strap, we're just going to be repeating the same pattern. So again, crochet over your ends, but you're going to do just one row of single crochet with our white yarn here. And then at the very end of this row, we are going to color change back to our pink yarn. Alright, so once we've changed back to our pink yarn, we've essentially finished all that we need to know for this striped strap. We're doing 4 rows of pink half double crochets, then we're going to do 1 row of white single crochets, 2 rows of red half double crochets, 1 row of white single crochets, and then we're going back to 4 rows of pink half double crochets, and we're repeating that until your strap is your desired length. Just make sure whenever you finish your strap, we're also going to be finishing once more with the 4 pink half double crochets. But you can make your strap however long you want. You can make it as long as short, whatever. Just again, keep in mind your strap will stretch if you don't line it. So make your strap accordingly with that in mind. But I'm going to come back here once I finish the strap and I will let you guys know how many rows I ended up doing with everything. Okay, so here is my final strap. It is about 24.5 inches long. I want this to fit more like a tote bag rather than a crossbody bag. If you want it to be a crossbody bag, I would probably add a few more inches to it, but again, just keep in mind it will stretch. And if you want to know how your strap is going to fit, just place it around your shoulder like how you would a normal bag, and then you can kind of imagine where the bag is going to sit. So like I said, I want this to fit like a tote bag, so when I put it around my shoulder, it looks like where a tote bag would sit. And now we're going to weave in these ends here just to make our life easier. You should only have 2 that you have to weave in, assuming you crocheted over all of these ends here. And with these ones, you can just tug on them real tight. And then you're going to stretch this strap just to make it more relaxed. You're going to do this for every single one, and then you can just cut them off. I'm going to start from here and then work my way down. I'm going to pull on the ends. And then stretch it back out. Here is what the strap is looking like now. Here's all the ends that I cut off. And real quick, I'm just going to weave in both of these tail ends. Alright, congratulations! You now have all of the parts to construct your bag complete. The next thing we're going to do is sew everything together so we have our basic bag shape. And the next thing that we're going to do is stitch everything together and sew it all together so we have our basic bag shape complete, and then after that we'll be able to add all our fun little details to give it that strawberry shortcake vibe. Alright, now that we have all of our granny squares done, we're going to be slip stitching them all together to make this shape that is on screen right now. This is the outline for a 13 granny square bag, which is what this bag is. And on screen as well, you can see where we're going to put each of these 4 granny squares. We're putting them in a specific place. That way, on the front and the back of the bag, the placement is going to be the same. As I just mentioned, we are going to be slip stitching these flowers together. That's just my preferred way of joining granny squares. However, you can do any other way that you like. You can sew them together, you can single crochet them together, you can do whatever. So to slip stitch these together, we're going to be using a 4.5mm hook, and we're also going to be using that same colored yarn that we used for the base of these pink granny squares. And we're going to essentially be slip stitching these inside out. You would think you would slip stitch them with the like sides facing out, but that's not what we're going to do. When you do that, it'll create almost like a puffy 3D seam, and we don't want that. We want like that puffy 3D seam to be on the inside. Now this is just personal preference. If you want the seam to be on the outside, you do you, but I'm going to be showing you how I slip stitch them together. So what we're going to do, you're going to take your granny square, flip it around so the bad side's facing you. You're going to insert your hook into the first chain of the chain 2 of our corner here. You're going to insert it here, and you're going to take your second granny square. This time you're going to have the good side facing you, and you're going to insert your hook into the exact same stitch that we just did. So go find a corner, it doesn't matter which one because they're all the same. Insert your hook into the first chain here. And if you don't know whether or not you're slip stitching them on the right side, lift up your granny square, and if both sides are the same, that's how you're doing it right. If you slip stitch it with one side out, one side in, it's going to be wonky. So now that both of our squares are on our hook, we're going to make a slip knot and insert our hook into that, and then you're going to pull through both of these, and then we're going to chain one here, and then I just like to pull the tail to make it nice and tight. And now we're going to slip stitch all the way down this row until we get to our chain 2 here. So we now should be going into our second chain here, second chain here, and we're just going to slip stitch. This should be our first treble crochet that we're going through on both squares. Slip stitch, second treble crochet, slip stitch, third treble crochet, slip stitch. So you're just going to slip stitch down the entire row until you get to your chain 2 right here. Now all I have left is these 2 chains, so we're going to go into the first one, slip stitch that here, and we're going to slip stitch our second and final chain here. Alright, you're going to cut your yarn and fasten that off. And this is what I mean by that little like puffy 3D seam. You can see it here, but if you flip it around to the other side, it's nice and neat. And that is what we're going for with this bag.
Alright, so now that we've slip stitched all of our granny squares together, you should have these 4 white flower granny squares in these spots specifically. That way, when you go to turn over your bag like I'm doing here, on either side of the bag, these white granny squares are going to be in the same place on both the front and the back of the bag. And in just a moment here, we are going to sew the bag together to get this nice shape here. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and weave in all of our ends. I promise you, you're going to want to weave in your ends now before we move on, and you won't want to do it anymore. So just take a moment and weave in all these ends, and we will be right back. This part is totally optional, but I'm going in with some fabric fusion over just some of my more loose ends that I have here, especially on my multicolored granny squares we have here, just to make sure my ends are super secure. I also went and did this to the border of my strap to make it nice and really secure. But like I said, this part is totally optional. You can just skip ahead if you don't want to do this part here. Now that all of our ends are weaved in, we're now going to move on to sewing our bag shape together. And to do this, you're going to want to turn your little shape around here, and then you're going to fold it in half just like I'm doing on screen here. And then what you're going to do, you see these 2 granny squares on the sides that are facing the wrong way. You're going to fold those in, and you can see the bag shape right here. This is what it's supposed to look like. And now what we're going to do, where my fingers are going across on screen now, we are going to sew all of those edges together. However, you're going to want to stop right before you reach the top of this granny square here. You don't want to sew to the very top because we still need to leave space to sew our strap in. So you're going to stop about halfway to 2/3 up that granny square. So with our yarn needle and our pink yarn attached, we're going to start sewing our bag shape together. You're going to want to go through the very first stitch on one side into the next,
And you're going to want to pull your yarn long enough so you can use that rest of the yarn for the entire half of the bag that we're currently working on. And you're just going to go through one side, out the other. You're going to go back to the first side, out the other. And when you're sewing these sides together, make sure the stitches on either side of the square line up because you don't want to sew it unevenly. And you're just going to continue sewing these edges together, and over here, as you can see, I'm flipping the granny square in half. You're going to continue just sewing these edges together until you get about halfway to 2/3 up the final granny square that is left open. And this is what I mean by only sewing about halfway to 2/3 up that final granny square. You're not going to want to totally finish the point on this granny square that we're working on here because we need room to sew in our strap. So once you finish sewing one side of the granny square, you're going to fasten off your yarn by just making a little knot like I'm doing here, and then you're going to weave in this end. And for our loose end on the other side that we started our sewing stitches on, you're going to do the exact same thing with that excess yarn, and then we're going to move on to sewing the other side of our bag together. As I just mentioned, we only sewed together half of our granny square bag, and this is what it should be looking like so far. We're now going to move on to sewing the other side, and we're going to do it the exact same way that we just did. Once we've finished sewing our granny square bag together, here's what it should be looking like. We're now going to add our strap. And to do this, you're going to want to take the top part of your bag and open it up a little bit so you can see this little V shape we have going on here. You're going to place your strap right in the center of that, making sure that those first couple rows are deep inside of the bag, because when we go to sew, we're going to sew about 2 to 3 rows of this pink part of the strap down to make it extra secure. And we're going to be using the same sewing method that we just did for the rest of the bag as well. So again, use your yarn needle and attach your pink yarn. Place your strap into that little V in the center of the bag, and we're going to start sewing once again about 2 to 3 rows worth of this strap inside of the bag. That way it's going to be nice and secure. And one thing to note, while you're sewing this bag, you're not gonna go all the way through to the other side of the yarn. You're only gonna pick up a little bit of the yarn, that way you don't see your sewing stitches on the outside of the bag. And here I'm just fastening off one end, and I'm gonna weave that in, and then we're gonna repeat these exact same steps for the other side of our strap. Once you've finished one side of your strap, it should be looking a little something like this. I purposefully left our very top stitches opened, and I didn't sew through them because we're going to be adding our white ruffles into this right after the strap, so I wanted to make sure that I left those stitches open so I have space to insert those ruffles. Once you finish sewing your strap on, congratulations! You have now successfully made a bag. All that's left for us to do is just add all the little fun detailings to really give it that strawberry shortcake vibe. And the first thing we're going to be doing is adding our white ruffles into this V on the top of our bag. Moving on to our ruffles, we're going to be using some white yarn and a 4.5mm hook.
And to get started, we're going to be making a slip knot. Make sure to leave a nice long tail so we can crochet over it as we go along with our ruffles. You're going to insert your hook into any one of these top stitches here. And you're just going to pull through so we attach our white yarn, and then we're going to chain 3, which is going to act as our first double crochet. We're now going to be inserting 3 more double crochets into the same stitch, and we're going to be repeating this entire pattern for the whole entire top to make our ruffles. We're going to be inserting a total of 4 double crochets in each stitch. If you want your ruffles to look a little less full, you could do 3 double crochets. If you want them to be more full, you could do 5 double crochets. Or if you wanted them to be taller, you could do treble crochets instead of double crochets. But for the sake of my bag, I'm just using double crochets and I'm doing 4 of them in each stitch. And like I said, we're just going to repeat this all the way around the bag and make sure we are crocheting over that tail. Once you've completed all your ruffles, here's what your bag should be looking like. And to finish off our ruffles, we're just going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 that we did in the beginning. And here's the back of the bag. The ruffles look really cute, as you can see. And like I said, they're pretty customizable, so you can do 3 double crochets, 4, 5, you can do treble if you want. But however you choose to do your ruffles, this is roughly what your bag should be looking like after the fact. Just make sure before we move on, we weave in that one tail that we have left. The next thing we're going to make is the flowers on the bag. So for this, you're going to be using some white yarn, yellow yarn, and we're going to be using a 4.5mm hook. We're going to get started by making a magic ring here. As you can see, it is very similar to making a slip knot. All you're doing is just pretty much adding a chain 1 at the end there. But once we have our magic ring, we're going to be inserting 5 single crochets with our yellow yarn into the center of this ring. And once you've done your 5 single crochets, you're going to slip stitch into the top of our first single crochet. You're going to close the ring, and then we're going to attach our white yarn. Once we've attached our white yarn, we're now going to slip stitch into the top of our next stitch rather than working straight into the one that we're currently in. Once you've done that, you're now going to chain 4. This is going to act as our first treble crochet. And now you're going to insert 3 more treble crochets into the same stitch that you're currently in for a total of 4 treble crochets. And then once you've finished those 4 treble crochets, you are now going to slip stitch into the very next stitch. Once you slip stitch into the next stitch, we're going to be repeating the same pattern. So we're going to chain 4, which is acting as our first treble crochet, and then we're going to insert 3 more treble crochets and then slip stitch into the next stitch. You're going to repeat this until you have a total of 5 petals for your flower. So I'm coming up on the end of my flower. I have finished my 4th treble crochet in my last stitch, and now we're just going to slip stitch under the first chain 4 that we did with our white yarn here, and that'll finish our last petal. Once we finished our first flower, we're now going to make 4 more because we want a total of 5 flowers. I've made all 5 of my flowers. I made 2 a little smaller just to give some size difference, and I did this by sizing down my hook, but you could also use double crochets instead of treble crochets, and that would work just fine as well. Moving on, we're now going to be working on our strawberries. We're going to use red, green, and white yarn for this, along with our yarn needle to embroider the seeds onto the strawberry, and then we're also going to be using a 4mm hook for this part. We're going to start with our red yarn, and we're going to make a slip knot on our hook, and we're now going to begin by chaining 12. Once you've chained 12, you are now going to single crochet down this entire row, and you should end up with a total of 11 single crochets.
Once you've reached the end, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work, and now we're going to increase in this very first stitch, which just means placing 2 single crochets in 1 stitch. And then you're going to single crochet down this entire row again until we reach the very last stitch. Once you reach the last stitch in this row, you're once again going to increase. Now we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're just going to single crochet like normal down this entire row. It should be looking a little something like this after your 3rd row, and now we're going to do 1 more row of just plain single crochet. Once you finish that 4th row, we're now going to turn our work, but we're not going to chain 1. What we're instead going to do is our first decrease in the front loops only. You do this by inserting your hook into the front loop only of that very first stitch, pulling up a loop, then inserting your hook into the next stitch in the front loop only, pulling up that loop, and then you're going to pull through all of the loops on your hook, and that is how you do a front loop only decrease or an invisible decrease. Now we're just going to single crochet down this entire row until you get to your last 2 stitches. That is where we're going to do another decrease. As you can see here, I'm on my last 2 stitches, so I'm inserting another decrease. And now we're going to repeat this exact same thing again. We're going to decrease, single crochet all the way down the row until you get to the last 2 stitches where you're going to do 1 more decrease. Here's what it looks like now, and for this next row we are going to chain 1 since we're just going to be doing a single crochet down this entire row. We're not going to be decreasing or increasing, just do single crochets down this entire row. And for this next row, we aren't going to chain 1 because we're going to do a decrease in those first 2 stitches, single crochet down the entire row, and then in the last 2 stitches, do yet another decrease. And now for our next row, we are going to chain 1 because this time we're just single crocheting down the entire row like normal. And here is where you can really start to see that strawberry shape starting to form. And now for our final 2 rows, we're going to be repeating the pattern of decreasing in those first 2 stitches, single crocheting down the line until you reach the last 2 stitches where you're going to do another decrease. And we're going to repeat this for our final 2 rows. Once you finish the base of your strawberry, it should be looking something like this. To make the stem of our strawberry, I'm going to be making a slip knot on my 4mm hook with our green yarn. We're going to insert our hook into the second stitch from the first on the top of our strawberry, and we're going to single crochet just right into that stitch that we inserted our hook to. You're going to crochet over your tails until you reach the second to last stitch on the top of the strawberry, and that's how we're going to create our stem. And once you've completed the stem, we're now going to be using our white yarn to embroider these seeds onto the strawberry. To embroider our seeds, you're going to attach your white yarn to your yarn needle, and you're going to pick a corner that you're going to start with on your strawberry. It can be the top left or the top right, doesn't matter, just choose one of the corners to start with. We're going to be doing 4 seeds on the top row, 3 in the middle, and then 2 on the bottom. And to start, you're going to pick your corner and you're going to pull your yarn needle through, leaving a lot of white yarn behind it. And then you're going to go back through the front and into the back side here.
And now what you're gonna do, you're gonna carefully pull through only some of the yarn so you can't see it on the front. And you're gonna make a little knot to secure the start of your yarn here. And there should be your first seed. And like I mentioned, we're doing 4 seeds, so you wanna space them out evenly so you can fit all 4 on the top row. And again, we're pulling through the back, inserting it through the front, and that's how you're gonna be creating your seeds. Again, for my third seed, I'm inserting my hook through the back, then I'm gonna insert it through the front, and we're gonna repeat this until we have all of our rows of seeds done. For our second row of seeds here, we're going to be working in the windows of our top row of seeds here. You can see my fingers pointing to where I mean. So for our first seed, we're going to go in the little window space of that top corner there. And again, just pulling through the back, and then you're going to pull the yarn back through the front to create those 3 seeds. And for this next row, again, we're just working in the windows of our previous seed row, so we're only going to be doing 2 seeds here. Again, going from the back and then pulling back through the front. And for our last row, I'm doing 1 last seed on the bottom quarter of our strawberry here. And now to fasten off your work, you're going to turn the strawberry around to the bad side, and like we did in the beginning, only pull through some of your yarn so we can't see it on the front, and then you're just going to make a little knot and then weave in this end. Now that you've completed your first strawberry, you're now going to be making a second one, following the same exact pattern that we just did. However, instead of chaining 12, you're going to be chaining 10. But you're still going to be following the same rows of increasing, single crochet, and decreasing. The only difference is instead of 4 rows of seeds, you're only going to be making 3. That way your strawberry appears a little smaller. Now that we have both of our strawberries and all of our flowers complete, we're now going to just put them on top of our bag just to see the general layout and that we want to sew them onto it. So here I am just adjusting all the flowers and the strawberries, just getting the general idea and where I want to put them on this bag. I might change it later, who knows. But then after this, we are going to make our giant bow centerpiece to go on our bag. For our bow here, you're going to need a hot glue gun, red yarn, white yarn, and optionally you can use felt, or if you have a thinner or smaller red yarn, you can just crochet a smaller version of the white heart we're going to make later. We're also going to be using a 4mm hook for this. And to get started, we are going to be making a slip knot with our red yarn, and we're going to be chaining 60. Now, once you've completed all 60 chains, you're just going to be doing 1 row of double crochet down this entire chain. So once you've finished that, go ahead and pass off your yarn and also weave in your ends because we're going to move on into using our hot glue gun in order to make the bow shape. For this part, make sure you have your hot glue gun on standby. And what we're going to do, you're going to straighten out this giant row of double crochet that we have here, and you're essentially just folding both of the sides in half towards the center, and then we're going to hot glue those center pieces down to create our bow shape. And don't worry if the center doesn't look that pretty, we are going to be covering it up with a heart later on. But for now, we're going to move on to making the 2 hanging parts at the bottom of the bow. To make the little tail ends of our bow, we're going to be making 2 of these, and we're going to start out by making a slip knot with our red yarn and chaining 25. And then just like before, we're going to be doing a double crochet down this entire row. And once you're done with this, make sure you do this a second time because we will be needing 2 of these. Now that you have your centerpiece bow and your 2 tail ends, you're going to take the tail ends and you're going to hot glue them to the back of our centerpiece here like I'm doing here. So now your bows should be looking like this here, and next we're going to be creating the white and red heart to go on top. To make the white heart to go on top of the bow, we're going to be using a 4mm hook and some white yarn. You're going to start by making a magic ring. And now we're going to insert 1 double crochet into this ring. Next, we're going to do 3 treble crochets. And now we're going to do 4 double crochets. Now we're going to insert 1 more treble crochet. And now we're going to do 4 more double crochets once again. Then we're going to do 3 more treble crochets. And then we're going to do 1 more double crochet. After that, you're just going to slip stitch into the center of the ring, pull it closed, and then you have your heart. And now we're just going to use our hot glue to glue our white heart onto the center of our bow here. And because I hot glued over the ends of my heart, I'm just going to cut them off here. And to make our red heart that's going to go in the center, I'm just going to use a small piece of red felt and I'm going to fold it in half. And on that fold part here, I'm just going to cut out half of a heart. So then when you open it up, it becomes a full heart. Now that we've cut out our red felt heart, we are going to hot glue this right on top to our white crocheted heart. And now that we've finished our bow, it is now time to attach all of our little details onto our bag. Now that all of our fun details are complete, you're going to put them on top of your bag just in the general layout and that you want to attach them with. And for this part, you are also going to need your hot glue gun ready. In addition to this, you will also need your yarn needle because we are about to attach everything to our bag. So to get started, we're actually going to be hot gluing our white flowers down. So you want to take that red bow off just so it's not in your way. And for all of our flowers, we're going to hot glue just the yellow center down. We're going to hot glue the flowers down rather than sewing them on because I still want the petals to kind of have that full 3D look, and if we were to sew them down, they would be completely flat onto the bag. And with our strawberries here, we are going to be sewing them on, but to keep them in place while we sew them together and just to make them a little extra secure, I am hot gluing the center of the strawberries down as well. And with our red bow here, just like our flowers, we're going to be hot gluing the center on because I don't want our bow to lay completely flat on the bag. I still want it to flow like a bow. So we're just going to hot glue the center down. And by not gluing or sewing the tails down, you can kind of see what I mean. You can still manipulate the ends of the tail
to get that little curled up look, which is what I'm going for with this bag. And here now I'm just cutting off all of our loose ends on our flowers. I made sure to purposely hot glue over all of the ends. That way I can just easily cut them off like I'm doing here. I'm also going back in with my hot glue gun and just hot gluing my stuff a little bit more just to make it a little bit more secure. Now we're going to take our yarn needle and we're going to attach our red yarn to it because we are now going to sew down our strawberries onto the bag. So here I'm just sewing back and forth with my red yarn. I'm going through the front of the bag only. Make sure you're not pushing your yarn so much through that you're going through the back of the bag accidentally. You wouldn't want to sew both sides of your bag together. That would not be fun. So I'm just going in and out with my stitches here on the strawberries. I'm going to repeat this with the small strawberry for the big strawberry as well. Now I'm just fastening off my red yarn and weaving in those ends, and like I said, we're going to repeat this exact same thing for our other strawberry here. And then for the top part on the green, I'm also going to sew that together as well. I just finished up my first strawberry, and here I am just kind of tugging on everything to make sure everything is stuck in place. And now I'm going to move on to sewing our second strawberry.
Alright everyone, so once you have finished your strawberry keychain here, you're essentially done with the whole bag. The one final step I am going to do here, I'm going to add some lining to my bag in order to give it some structure and to make it a little bit more secure. This part is totally optional. If you don't want to add a lining, then congratulations, you finished your whole bag. But stick around if you want to see how to hand sew a lining into your bag. I don't own a sewing machine, so I'm going to be showing you all how I hand sew a lining in. Obviously, if you have a sewing machine, feel free to use that, but this is just for all of my people out there who are like me and don't own a sewing machine. There's also multiple ways to hand sew a lining. This is just my personal favorite way to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I apologize in advance, this might be very hard to see because I don't have a lot of desk room to work with. But you're gonna take your fabric of choice. I got this cotton fabric off of AliExpress, so it's just a few dollars. And you're gonna take your fabric and you're gonna fold it in half. Mine's already folded in half here. And then you're gonna make sure you have your bag on hand. You can leave your strawberry keychain on the bag, it really doesn't matter. Once you have your bag placed on top of your fabric, you're just going to use any kind of pencil or marker tool, and you're going to trace the outline of your bag onto your fabric. I like to do about 1 inch to 1.5 inches larger because we do need some extra fabric for seam allowance later on. So I'm going to quickly trace my bag and I will come back once I have finished that. Alright, I've come back now with my bag outline traced here. You can see I did it with pen. Sorry I couldn't show it on camera. My desk is just not big enough for me to show that. But now you're just going to cut this out, and because we folded our fabric in half, you're going to end up with 2 pieces that are the exact same size. Okay, so here I've cut out both of my pieces of fabric. As you can see, I have them both here. I'm also saving some of the scrap fabric, that way I can sew a pocket on the inside of our bag here later on as well. So now we're going to start sewing our bag together. So to begin sewing our lining together, we're going to take our 2 fabric pieces and you're going to flip them so you have the good sides of the fabric kissing, is how I like to remember it. And now what we're going to do, we're just going to sew along the edges here to make basically like a mini bag out of this fabric. I also want to preface this by saying I'm probably not the best teacher in terms of hand sewing. I'm completely self-taught. I never even like watched a video or anything on how to hand sew. I just thought that it looked like common sense and tried it for myself. So what I'm doing might not be 100% right, but just hopefully giving you guys the basic idea on how to hand sew your lining together. So I'm just going
around these edges here. Okay, so once you've sewn that together, you're now gonna flip it inside out. And it should be looking something like this now. You have your little bag shape, and again, make sure you leave this part open here because this is going to be the top of our bag. And now what you're going to do to actually put this inside your bag, you're going to want to make sure you have your bag on hand here. I'm going to take the keychain off. Now, to sew this inside of our bag, you're going to take your bag and you're going to flip it inside out. Make sure that you take any keychains that you have on off. It'll be a lot easier to sew that way. So you're going to flip your entire bag inside out. Now, once you've flipped your bag inside out, we're now placing our whole bag inside of our fabric lining that we have here. So once you've placed your crochet bag inside of your lining, it should look like this. We're gonna go ahead and get our needle and thread ready. You can also use some pins to help you out with this, because what we're gonna do to get rid of these ugly edges that we have here, you're gonna fold them down and fold them in half. And that's also why we traced our bag with about an inch, inch and a half bigger than what we actually needed. That way we can fold these down here. And you can use your pins to help keep this in place if you need. I don't like using pins. I don't know why. I just kind of fold it as I go. Once you're ready to go, pick any starting place on the bag. It can be literally anywhere. I like starting with like the corner points on top of here, so that's where I'm gonna start. And the trick when you're sewing in linings on your crochet bag, you're not gonna push through the entire way. You're not going to go through the whole piece of yarn, because then you're going to see your stitches on the outside, and we do not want that. You're only going to go about halfway through the yarn, and that way you're not going to see your stitches on the outside of your bag. Also, there is somebody currently mowing the grass. I'm very sorry if you can hear that. Alright, I've done my first stitch here. And as you can see, you can see some of the fabric because this granny square isn't fully solid, but you can't really see the stitches, and that's what we're aiming for. Okay, so I have finished sewing in the lining on my bag. Here's what she is looking like. And now, I'm gonna do one more thing with this lining on the bag before we use our scrap fabric to add a pocket. I'm gonna take my hot glue gun here, and just around the edges here where you can kind of fold this fabric back, I'm gonna hot glue that down just to make it a little bit more secure. Just before you do this part, make sure your lining looks right, like flip your bag right side out, to make sure that everything looks good, because once you hot glue this lining down, there is no going back. So I just finished going around hot gluing all of my ends on here. And now you can totally stop here and be finished with your bag completely, but I am going to take it one step further and add a little pocket using some of our excess fabric that we have here. So I have a scrap piece of fabric here that I'm going to use to make a little pocket, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my hot glue gun, and I'm going to fold my edges in just a little bit and hot glue them down. Alright, and we're just going to repeat that for our 3 other sides here. And you could totally sew this if you wanted to, especially if you have a sewing machine. I would recommend that, but sewing by hand is way too tedious for me, and I don't have the patience. And in my experience with doing this on my bags, I've never had an issue, so I'm gonna continue to do it. Okay, I folded all of my edges in, and here is what my pocket's looking like. And now you're just gonna pick a point on your bag that you want to sew this pocket on, and we're gonna sew 3 of the sides here, obviously just leaving the top side open. I finished my pocket here. It took an embarrassingly long amount of time, and I just did the blanket stitch to make it look a little more neat here. Came out really good, and now we are officially done with our bag. I'm gonna go ahead and flip it back out. All right, everyone. Oh my god. Take a moment, take a step back, and admire your work, because look at how stinking cute this bag is. And you have your super cute strawberry lining on the inside of the bag too, and a little pocket as well. And here she is, guys. Oh my goodness. And since I already have the original version of the bag, I don't need a second one for myself. I'm totally fine with my first one. So I will be selling this one on my Depop. When I post this video, I will be posting the Depop link along with it. So if you are interested in purchasing this bag for yourself, that is available for you on there. But yeah, I think that's all I have left to say. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I know it might have been chaotic at times. I'm not great at teaching, but I hope at least someone found this helpful. And if you make this bag, please tag me. I would love to see all of your creations. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you next time for another tutorial. Bye!